Moving on now to our next Disclosure Project witness, Carl Wolf. A few things need to be explained first before we watch the clip. In 1965, NASA sent a space probe called the Lunar Orbiter to the Moon. This unmanned vehicle was in orbit around the Moon, taking very detailed photographic images of the lunar surface as it passed overhead. One thing to point out about the Moon is, from the Earth we only ever see one side of it. This is because of the way the Moon rotates around the Earth, always presenting the same face towards the Earth. So there is an entire side of the Moon that we never actually see. The only way to see it is by getting in a spaceship and travelling to the back side of the Moon. Carl Wolf describes a trip he made in 1965 to the laboratory where the photographs were coming back from the lunar orbiter.
Good morning. My name is Carl Wolf, and I was a precision electronics photographic repairman with a top secret crypto clearance in the United States Air Force. I was stationed at Langley Air Force Base in Virginia. In 1965, in mid-1965, I was loaned to the Lunar Orbiter Project at NASA on Langley Field. Dr. Colley was in charge of that project. They had problems with a piece of electronic equipment that was bottlenecking their production of photographs. I went to the facility, and when I walked into the facility, there were scientists from all over the world. I was stunned, actually, to see people at a NASA project from all over the world. It didn't make any sense to me initially. I was taken into the laboratory where the equipment was malfunctioning. I couldn't repair it in the dark. I asked to have it removed. A airman second class was in the dark room at that time. I was also an airman second class. I was interested in how the whole process functioned, how the data got from the lunar orbiter to the laboratory. I asked the young man if he'd describe the process to me. He did. About 30 minutes into the process, he said to me, in a very distressed way, by the way, we've discovered a base on the backside of the Moon. And then he proceeded to put photographs down in front of me, and clearly in these photographs were structures, mushroom-shaped buildings, spherical buildings, and towers. And at that point, I was very concerned because I knew we were working on compartmentalized security. He had breached security, and I was actually frightened at that moment, and I did not question him any further. And a few moments later, someone did come into the room. I worked there for 3 more days, and I remember going home and naively thinking, I can't wait to hear about this on the evening news. And here it is, more than 30 years later, and I hope we hear about it tonight. And I will testify under oath before Congress that what I'm saying is the truth.
Now, he doesn't seem the type that would tell fibs. Moving on to the third and final Disclosure Project witness that I'm featuring. Clifford Stone worked for the US Army for 20 years in an elite top secret team. This team was responsible for dealing with UFO crashes, specifically the retrieval of crashed UFO vehicles. He claims he was involved in the cover-up of 12 flying saucers and that he witnessed alien bodies during these events.
I was a Sergeant First Class, United States Army. I had a secret clearance with nuclear surety. I could get the clearance that I needed to do whatever it was that was necessary for me to do at the time on special operations when I was called in on those. What I'm referring to here is that I was involved in situations where we actually did recoveries of crashed saucers, for lack of a better term, debris thereof. There were bodies that were involved with some of these crashes, also some were alive. While we were doing all this, we were telling the American public there was nothing to it. We were telling the world there was nothing to it. But the whole situation is, we've set back, we've told the American people that there's no such thing as UFOs. I've been involved where we have recovered these objects. We know them to be of extraterrestrials. In 1969, I had an event that happened to me while I was stationed at Fort Lee, Virginia. We went to Indiantown Gap, Pennsylvania. That would be my first exposure to any time that we would be recovering an unidentified flying object. When we went there, we already had people that was already in the facility. We were a backup team, which was supposed to be NBC because there were supposed to be some nuclear materials that was on board this craft. Later on, most people involved were to be told that there was nothing on board it. It was nothing more than just a crash of one of our aircraft. I know better because I was one of the people that approached it with a Geiger counter to get surface readings. I was the first person to go ahead and see that there were bodies on it. That would be the first of approximately 12 events. UFO crashes are not events that take place every day. They're rare. I know we're not alone in the universe. I know that the absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. It's evidence that has been denied to the American people. I stand before you today in my almighty God, and I tell you this. If Congress calls me in and says, will you testify in detail what you know, I stand here today prepared and ready to do just that. Governments must never lie to the people for no reason. Thank you.
As I mentioned earlier, the Disclosure Project press conference did not really achieve its goal. 4 months after this event, 9/11 happened and the world's attention was sidetracked. Since 1945, there have been 11 American presidents. Firstly, I'm going to deal briefly with the presidents that did not have intentions of disclosure, i.e. the presidents that were involved with the cover-up. Then go into more detail on presidents that are known to have been in favour of disclosure. President Truman set up the CIA to centrally control all intelligence. Then he set up a secret organisation called MJ-12 with the specific intention of covering up the facts about Roswell and other incidents. So we can safely say that he was involved with the cover-up. Eisenhower was again involved with the cover-up. He allegedly met with aliens in 1954 at Edwards Air Force Base and formed the Greada Treaty. He decided not to go public with the facts and continued the cover-up which had started under Truman. Lyndon Johnson, president in the 60s, was informed of the civilization which is believed to exist on the far side of the moon. Although he is known to have had interest in the phenomena, he showed no inclination towards disclosing anything. President Nixon is alleged to have escorted Jackie Gleason to view alien bodies at Homestead Air Base in Florida. He is also known to have had a large collection of UFO books, but at no point is there any evidence of him pursuing disclosure to the public. Ronald Reagan again was involved with the cover-up, and on the odd occasion was known to slip up and say things he shouldn't have, which revealed his knowledge of the subject. George Bush Sr. was head of the CIA in 1977 when Jimmy Carter was president. Bush actually prevented Carter from gaining access to the UFO files because he knew Carter wanted to disclose the information to the public. So we can safely say that Bush was involved in the cover-up, and we can presumably conclude that George W. Bush was also involved in the cover-up.